From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. It's our post-podcast live stream. Make sure, obviously, everyone stays tuned for the podcast that drops tomorrow. But welcome, and we encourage you to be interactive here. Ask questions. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Don't be afraid to get in our faces during the live stream here. Guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk about esports and gaming.
What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze business implications of everything happening in this industry.
The live stream's getting bigger!
I know.
Make sure you go buy William's book, The Book of Esports, which it's killing it on Amazon as always. I think everyone has it by now, but if you don't, go buy it. And even if you do, maybe go buy a second copy, you know.
Nothing says I love my mom and dad like the Book of Esports.
And on the after show, we cover all the stuff that just didn't make it into the podcast. It's still just as good. It's just as interesting. It's maybe even better because we get to interact with you guys.
Ghost Runner, I managed to fit that in with about the busiest week of work I've ever had. So anytime
priorities, right?
It's an anti-William is late device.
It's very effective.
Don't count on it though.
Risky. Hot garbage. It's an indicator of bad money management. It's an indicator of immature management.
I have some hot takes.
For the vast majority of people who game, and look, if you look at just the gaming market, the dollar in revenue, the $137 billion global gaming market, $70 billion of that is mobile. $70 billion. For those guys, this is a revolution.
Listening. Thank you for tuning in every week. Thank you for leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it.
If I was Epic, I'd be hiring some of the best talent away from Facebook, not from other game developers. I actually think they should have a fire sale, right? Sell the company at rock bottom price because it's going to zero. And I think the natural, interesting acquirer would be Apple. And they would convert them to literally Apple arcades. We want people to funnel in. We want everyone in the audience ready to go and all hyped up. That's the idea. Julian says the live stream is the best by far.
And I, for one, welcome the fact that anything that gets you to stop playing Candy Crush is good for us as a whole.
The live stream!
William and I went on a bit of a tangent.
World of Warcraft drops, yeah.
A little bit of a tangent. This is the first interesting thing I've seen from a competitive level to what Twitch is doing. I mean, let's start with a big story. It's impossible to ignore big numbers.
This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet, William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, William Collis, Lindsay Poss, Jeff Cohen. The whole gang is here. For those of you who are new to the live stream, welcome to the official live stream of esports. What we do here is we cover the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. It's all just as exciting. It's all just as interesting. We still look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We still dissect. We still analyze all the business implications of everything happening. It just didn't make it into the podcast. And the beauty of that is we get to do it live with you guys. We get to do it live with our viewers, with our fans. We get to discuss and make you guys a part of that discussion. So thank you for showing up. For you, the regulars, the ones who are here every week, and you guys know who you are. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It's why we keep doing this. Make sure to tell your friends, bring your friends, invite them to the live stream, make them be a part of the show. Lindsay, Jeff, William, how you guys doing?
Good.
You know how
I know.
I'm
We just
doing,
taped the
Paul.
podcast.
You know. We just taped the podcast.
I do know how you're doing.
Heroes of the Storm, new hero. Let's just have the whole live stream do the trailer for him looping.
That occupied far too much time of our podcast talking about your new hero. But it's I take some of the blame. I take at least half of the blame here.
The podcasts are held pretty strictly to like an hour,
Yeah.
right? Somehow I managed to get 20 minutes of the podcast. Like we found business implications for Hogger. It was
For
great.
Hogger.
Like, yeah.
That's it. Lindsay, Jeff, how are you guys doing?
Good.
This is
It's been a good week.
Yeah, this is the best 2 hours of the week. You know, every week. This week, especially because I got to cut out a little early of a virtual prenatal birthing class that I was doing. I was doing some sort of course with my wife that you do when you're, preparing to have a child. And she let me skip it, an hour early. This was work, which, sort of is, I guess. Hopefully she's not watching because she's still in the class. But yeah, I got,
when you say virtual birthing, I imagine the two of you sitting there with like Oculus headsets on. Is that
I take it you don't have kids, do you?
No.
It's I don't know. It's I guess it wasn't
No,
that.
you do. I remember having to do those courses, Jeff.
Yeah, it's like this is how you know you're in labor. Like when this happens, you need to go to the hospital like immediately.
Well, why is my idea so stupid? Why is this not an Oculus app you can
yours is
download
better, but
called,
that wasn't what-
pregnancy training, right? For husband and for wife. And it puts you through the scenario, right? You put the goggles on. All of a sudden you see the woman there and, her waters burst or whatever. And you need to do something, right? Like, I don't know.
This could be $1 billion idea, Paul. I mean, this.
I give away $1 billion ideas every single episode.
Paul,
Birthing,
you're just king of virtual reality content ideas right now. You're just
That's
knocking it out
true.
of the park.
Martin says, "Looks like Jeff is officially a regular." Jeff is a regular now.
Yeah,
Martin. Good,
Thank you, Martin.
good observation and welcome, guys. Before we jump in, let me just tease what we covered on the podcast this week. And I'm going to share my screen here so that everyone can actually see it. But there were some really good topics this week that William and I dug into that I think everyone's going to have fun with. And I will say the first one was our good friend Ninja, who has been on the record with GQ Australia specifically
saying how that esports should have their own Olympics, that we shouldn't care that the normal Olympics don't want us, that we should create our own Olympics, he calls it. And so William and I had a really good discussion around that. We also talked about how Korean esports broadcasting station OGN is going to close and some theories around why. And finally, we talked about a little, not so much tinfoil, some of the more reasonable theories around why Roblox made an acquisition right before their IPO and basically after they filed their S1, which is a little bit unusual in and of itself. But we have some theories on why that is.
What was the quick version? What's the tinfoil theory? Because what would be the tinfoil theory?
So we were debating if we saved the real tinfoil stuff for the live stream. So we kept it sort of moderate tinfoil for the podcast. The article says this is just them beefing up their HR capabilities. Embellis has these simulation-based tests where they can assess a human being basically better than an SAT can. And sort of the moderate, the middle of the road, not the total tinfoil. The middle of the road theory is that somehow Roblox might introduce an entire education product or service, or where they can essentially train and assess their 13 to 18-year-old audience, and that be part of the platform. You want to go play game XYZ, you can. You want to go get an education, if you're 13 to 18, you can as well. So it's interesting. There are even more crazy tinfoil theories, like they're collecting data on every 13-year-old and selling that somehow. And all these games are just dressed up, recruitment tests or cognitive assessments, basically. And some arm of the government wants to just monitor every child in the country. I don't know. There's lots of tinfoil potential theories with this. But it was an interesting conversation, and I highly recommend everyone tuning in tomorrow when the podcast drops to listen to that conversation. Why, Jeff? Did you have a tinfoil theory?
Oh no, I just wasn't sure where you're going with the tinfoil thing. I think some of those are pretty reasonable business cases, like creating, an education arm is probably smart. I thought you were saying they need growth because growth's going to slow, so they did this to boost their numbers. I thought that you were going the mainstream tinfoil, not.
Oh no, it could be a secret undercover CIA program to recruit. Potential. I don't know. We can get real tinfoil if you want.
Fair
right?
enough.
The CIA using Roblox.
Definitely not caught on to Roblox as a recruitment tool.
Well, they could be using it to groom, to groom and identify potential spies at a young age. I don't know.
Wow, you guys are just going all save it for the. We got to save something for the podcast, but this is actually, I think this was one of my, I'll be bold, this is one of my favorite podcasts of the year, maybe. I really enjoyed recording tonight's podcast or tomorrow's podcast.
You just like talking about Heroes of the Storm for 20 minutes. Let's be honest.
Play the trailer, Paul. I'll put the link. Play the trailer. Okay.
What is there a trailer for the new hero?
Oh my god, people make content for this game. Yes, there's a trailer. It's awesome. The Hogger trailer.
Is it better or worse than the Viking video?
The Viking video was good too. I don't know what you're talking about.
Viking
I
video.
asked for a placement here.
Are you talking about the WoW ads, Lindsay?
No, I'm talking about the Valorant Viking team from Guild. Where William said, I think they'll be good because they have a great video.
Everybody liked it, even me.
What do you guys think? Have you all seen the WoW promotional videos? It wasn't on my list of topics to talk about, but
no,
I'm
I
curious.
haven't. Have they done new promo videos?
Have you not seen this with a whole bunch of celebrities with the horns?
No, I honestly haven't seen this. I'm actually
what
really
kind of
interested.
celebrities are you talking about?
No, lots of mainstream celebrities. like the kid, one of the kids from Stranger Things.
Wes Anderson doing it? If not, I'm not interested.
The actor from Last Kingdom, the guy who plays Uhtred.
A great standard if you can name the celebrity's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't, but someone, like if Lindsay had seen the ad, I'm sure she could.
Like,
it depends on what kid from Stranger Things you're talking about.
Yes, one of the kids is from Stranger Things.
No, I know. I'm saying I only know the names of a couple.
Yeah.
Well,
So if they got one of the lower tier ones, I'm out.
No, it was Mike from Stranger Things.
Oh, his name's Finn something. I forget his last name.
I know the character's
so
name.
Is that like Lindsay knows half the
Can we
name?
just
What
talk
is that
about
for?
the content of this ad?
Yeah.
Sure.
What do you want to talk about?
You guys have to watch it first. But
Okay.
basically, the issue I had was I don't think it's a very good ad. I think it's extremely boring. They got a ton of celebrities. The question is, do you think they paid them or paid them modestly and a lot of these celebrities just wanted to be in a WoW ad? Or do you think all these celebrities got sort of their full normal going rate?
I think they probably paid them.
Yeah.
People just happen to be like super WoW, fans, but
Because it's a weird hodgepodge of celebrities,
it's possible.
I felt like the only common thread was maybe they're all huge WoW fans.
Yeah.
But like then if that's the case, then that is the most woefully underutilized asset in the ad because you should just have the people you should have the celebrities talking about how they play WoW. Like there. I was a brand manager for 5 years. I wrote your commercial. Like, boom.
Here, I'll show you guys. Oh yeah, there was the guy from Community too.
Okay, again,
Abed from Community.
Oh, I love him.
I do like that.
Danny
guy.
Booty.
Good.
Buddy Booty. I don't know how to say
Okay,
that.
hold on.
You know
I'm
them by
gonna
their
I'm gonna bring
character
this
name, not
up.
Their real name.
You guys can't hear the audio, but
I don't.
basically they all pick up this horn.
This is kind of cool.
I don't know who she is.
Don't know who that.
I think she's a
is.
golfer.
Okay, these guys. I don't think this was the definition of a big spend ad campaign from what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
But this is what I mean. What connected all of these people other than just maybe a love for WoW? Ronda Rousey.
Oh.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey does love WoW, right? She's pretty public about being. Maybe they do all like
Jin
WoW.
Yang from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I know that guy.
That's funny.
Maybe they do all like WoW. That's actually interesting. And then
Hodor.
Hodor. Oh, and now he's gone all punk because he's a punk DJ, right, or something. He's like,
This is the guy from The Last Kingdom.
Yep. I mean, it is actually pretty interesting to me.
It's just a bunch of celebrities blowing this horn.
Known hands.
Game of Thrones guy.
Oh, is that Bran?
Yeah.
It's Bran.
Oh, he looks so different with a haircut.
He does. He does look different and in a modern setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, this ad also goes on for a very long time.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Doing the chat, man.
Like I'm
I'm
actually watching this and I'm like, you couldn't have given this a 55-second edit? Like that
Are
was,
there words
was a
talking
little
about WoW here? Because otherwise I would have no idea that it was about WoW.
Oh, there's so many problems.
So did you guys for those watching, do you think that's an effective ad? It's just a bunch of celebrities blowing the horn.
No.
Absolute dirtbag ad. Sorry, that's aggressive, but it doesn't. I really think people overthink advertising. My basic first question for any ad is, did it show you the product 3 times and say it? If it didn't do it, you will never convince me it's a good ad. I'm still from the old school form of advertising, which is you have to say what people need to buy. You have to show it to them when you say it, and you have to do it 3 times or they don't remember. And that's literally not
accomplished here.
That's how I watch TV. You don't know, right? You don't know.
The question is, did they pay all these celebrities nothing, a discounted rate, or their full going rate?
Full going rate. I can't believe you're asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I still believe they're all like fans, I think, of the game. I don't know.
Paul might be right, but they probably still paid something close to going rate.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those guys, they don't even do commercials, so who knows, going rate's all flexible. But I doubt they did it for free. No, people don't. You can't even get like someone to post a tweet for free. It's just
This is true.
Attention is all bought and sold at this point. But yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a very effective ad. I mean, it's also really long, so you get it. It's gonna be expensive to put that on TV.
I think they do have cut down versions for TV that I've seen,
What
and
was it
Instagram
for?
and things like that for the new expansion, Shadowlands.
Okay, I mean that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure, as someone who doesn't play WoW, that I had some idea what it was for.
It is supposedly a good expansion though. This is from what I've heard.
I'm sure it is. When has WoW had a bad expansion? Like, it's consistently well updated game.
This is a total tangent, but I heard Asmongold's theory today that Blizzard does one good and one bad. And if you go through the list, it holds true completely. Like if you literally go through the entire, so like BFA was a total disaster. So Shadowlands was going to have to be good. And the next one will be a total disaster. And then the one after, and he went through the whole and gave reasons for each one. It was very clever. And I thought that his theory held true. So there must be two teams inside Blizzard.
Movies? Haven't we had this theory since like even numbered ones are good, odd numbered ones are bad, or it's the other way around? I don't remember.
So Greg says, "Hey guys, you're the best." Greg, you're the best. That's already the best comment of the entire live stream. Martin says they thought these people you barely recognize like this game was a compelling ad. We recognize them.
Hodor and Bran are like, they speak to me. Like, it's just, I do think it needs a reason why they're endorsing it. And I think the reason, I think it needed to be like, we all play WoW, you two sound the horn, something like that. Like, it just, even something like that.
Get your friends to play WoW. Greg, no offense, but what's Jin Yang's going rate? He's not getting Guilfoyle money. Well, Greg, I don't know. He did come up with the seafood app, so I don't know. All right, guys, let's jump into some news. Enough messing around here. Let's start with something pretty heavy, I would say, heavier than maybe what we normally tackle on the live stream. And this was an article from abc.net in Australia, and it was esports regulator says there's been a very significant upturn in match fixing. The article goes on to say, they quote Fnatic, that few esports teams have achieved the success of Fnatic. It spawned sort of this global brand. And supposedly that while the audiences in Australia for esports have increased, that there are indications that there is a lot of match fixing going on at tournaments in the country. And, this is because there's greed, I guess, and people are betting under the table. I'm not sure. They talk about how they receive allegations, about 100 of them every single day, to this organization called the Esports Integrity Commission, or whatever that's worth. I don't know, William, if you've even heard of them, but
it's a good name. Like, to be fair, like, I think like that's a good name to have for your organization, and I probably know what they do. So,
but just to put that 100 number into context, that 100 allegations every day, they say if you look at a sport like cricket, they have 4 to 6 match fixing investigations annually, and in terms of investigations in esports, they had 14, and that was in a span of 3 months. And so they think there's a lot of match fixing going on. I'm curious what you guys think of this. Is this just anecdotal and it's people who lost who are complaining, or because in esports, these are just allegations. I don't know how many of them that are investigated that turned out to be true, but match fixing, I would argue, is easier in esports than in traditional sports. Do we think it's running rampant?
Well, actually, can I start this with a chat comment? There's actually a really good chat comment from Chris of Coins in this, which is, I think there's a really strong incentive problem right now, which is like, if you're a semi-professional pro, you just don't earn a lot of money. And it's such an unviewed market. It's super easy to do. If that article, I think if you keep going, talks about actually a pro gamer who's betting on himself, right? And
Yeah,
claims I'm only betting on
semi-pro CS:GO player
Yeah.
who was betting on his own matches.
Yeah, he claims I'm betting on myself to win, but like, you can earn a lot of money betting yourself. You bet yourself to lose. Like, that's a good way to do it.
The article also quotes him saying, sorry, William, that he had been offered $2,000 to throw matches by people who were betting on the matches.
Like, it's actually
just that number alone. I mean, $2,000. I think this goes to Chris's point. You know, as esports become more professional and the salaries go up, you have more of a structure. This problem does sort of fix it. I don't want to say fix itself. You need, organizations like this esports, integrity commission. You need the gambling operators to be cognizant of this. The data providers to flag it when things do come up. But if you're making $5 million a year, someone comes to you and says, "Hey, $2,000, you throw this match," you literally laugh at them. You just don't do it because the numbers, it's not worth it. Right. So, I do think as things professionalize and salaries get, a little bit higher, it does take care of itself to some extent. And we're also talking about, when we're talking about esports, there's a ton of different leagues. And like Chris said, some of them are in China, some of them aren't super professionalized. When you look at traditional sports, if we were talking about some random soccer league, in Russia, there's probably a lot of fraud that goes on there, but we're not talking about it because we only look at the allegory to the big traditional sports leagues.
Let me just push back a bit, Jeff. Like, if you're saying it's a matter of time and growth in the salaries of the players, right? Wouldn't that also mean there's growth in terms of esports betting and the volume of betting and the dollars that are at stake and things like that? And therefore, you might get a person who's betting hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on key matches who has an incentive now to go to a player and say, "Hey, take a dive. Here's $1 million."
Yeah, but I think the risk reward for the players still becomes, it doesn't become worth it. But I see your point is a valid one.
Well, the point where I was going with it, just to finish it off, when I think Chris is pointing, is like, look, the high end stuff, there's integrity, there's enforcement, it's getting safer. But for these semi-pro players, you can still bet on them. They're still listed, right? A lot of places. But the incentives are so strongly, there's just such a strong economic incentive to cheat because it's difficult to live off the unreliable winnings anyway. That being said, I do think there's a reason why the betting is on the uptick. It's the incidence on uptick. It's because esports is on the uptick, right? So like you would expect as more people play the sport, more people cheat. Like it's not shocking, right? That's one. But two is the incentives to cheat have come up because 10 years ago, no one would have bet a thing on esports. Now all of a sudden there's betting and stuff like that. So the reality is you have a growing market and a growing betting market. The number of cases of cheating will increase. And I think it's up to the industry to address it, right? Like it's also a relatively unaddressed problem in the industry. That's the third thing I'd say. Like there's very limited enforcement. So it's really like, how do you get caught? Like really, how do you get caught if you're playing from home in a match? Like what? Somebody's going to come to your house and so.
But William, can I just press on that point? How do you get caught? In other words, if someone pays me $5,000 to throw a CS:GO match, right? I can miss shots.
Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing about traditional sports, though, right? Like if you pay a basketball player to miss the hoop, like they can put up a good game and lose 53-54, right? But I think the difference in esports is, so much of the player's view, particularly when it's played from at home, is not visible, right? So at least with traditional sports, you can kind of tell if someone's low. I'm not so sure it's that when you can just see players and actions on a screen and everything. And when players generally do miss things, like they generally miss a blip on the mini map that gives them a clue about a rotation, or they generally do forget that an ult is coming up and engaged a little early, or they genuinely do just like miss the rubber banding and don't click ahead when they need to get a headshot. Like I think it's harder to see when you don't have the whole athlete performance profile in front of you. And in esports, you just have the digital avatar, not the physical person also playing.
Chris says 13 billion worldwide in 2020, allegedly. Chris, I'm assuming you're talking about total esports betting. I've seen estimates as high as 17 billion or 17.5 billion this year. So that number actually may be even bigger.
I'd say it's higher.
So there's a lot of dollars at stake.
Either way, by the way, just to put that into context, let's say it is your number 13 billion. Newzoo estimates esports to be $1 billion. So, like, where like, which market would you rather be in? And I think that cuts two ways. One is that Newzoo number is way too low, but also it shows you the impact of betting on the esports space today, right? Like, it's a really significant impactor in our market and how our industry is going to evolve.
But are we not seeing then a perfect arbitrage opportunity here? Pay dollars, bet big dollars on matches you're fixing. I mean, like, and basically you can't get caught.
Well, Paul, it sort of goes down to what type of person are you?
No, I'm not advocating any criminal activity here or cheating. I'm just saying what is the solution then, right?
I think I think there's a couple different things. Unfortunately, this is one of the pros to having an overseeing body in this type of environment. I mean, the NCAA straight up outlaws any type of gambling, and you sign at the beginning of the year that you're not going to gamble. And when March Madness rolls around, you cannot fill out any brackets if you are participating in NCAA sanctioned sports. You can't even do the lowest level form of entering $5 with your friends for fear of punishment. So the one way of actually stopping the problem is, rather than trying to catch it when it happens, is through deterrence, which I think that you could do without an overseeing governing body, and it just could be dependent upon the league. But essentially, if you get caught, you're out. And especially since game developers can have a lot of control over who even enters into the game, the punishment could be pretty serious for the crime if you can't even log on to the game anymore. We actually did see that happen a little bit with one of the players who supported the Hong Kong protests. I believe he got kind of kicked out of the game, which is a completely different situation. But I'm just saying, if you participate in match fixing, there could be some sort of punishment, which might be a little bit easier than actually catching it in the first place. So.
I mean, doesn't that make it the even more perfect crime, right? I'm the guy who's betting big, okay, on this match. And I go and I approach this player. I give him $5,000, tell him take a dive, right? Lose the match. I win my bet. This poor player gets banned for forever. And what are the repercussions for the criminal in that?
Then your name gets out into the community as someone who's going to do that. That depends on the silence of a whole lot of people if you continuously make that play, and that silence isn't going to last forever.
So Lindsay, the extension of your thought then is you need the betting platforms to take some responsibility in that.
Sure, that would be one way. So some type of deterrence measure somewhere in order to disincentivize people from actually participating in that. There could be a monetary fine if you're found to participate. That would be huge. Yeah. There could be a whole range of deterrents. And I'm not saying I know what they should be or have any idea what they should be, but I definitely think that putting in deterrence and disincentivization is much easier than trying to catch it when it's happening.
I think from an operator perspective too, it would be pretty evident pretty quickly. Because if you look at the way that esports bettors bet versus traditional sports bettors, they're typically betting a lot more on live events rather than pre-match. They're betting much, much smaller increments, much more frequently. So if you had someone coming in and dropping like $25,000 on some random, CSGO tournament that wasn't even like, first of all, you would have limits. So your max bet would be like $300 or $500. So you mitigate your risk that way. But if someone came in and dropped $25,000 on some random match and that was the only time he ever bet, like that bet would probably get canceled or that person's account would get frozen after. I think you would catch it fairly quickly, particularly if the person did it more than once or twice.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. You're speaking from the perspective of working for a company that's in the space that's super regulated, right? Yeah. Sort of the cream of the crop from a regulatory standpoint. There are a lot of shady betting operators out there who may not care, right? And more money flowing through their system.
Arguably, they might do worse things to that person. We don't like break people's legs for that kind of stuff. But if you're dealing with like some shady bookie, like I probably wouldn't want to rip them off just in general.
Chris says, waiting for you guys to call me as the Vegas guy. Chris, you are the Vegas guy. We know you are the Vegas guy. There have been some lifetime bans through ESIC after the CSGO camera bug was revealed. Well, it's interesting that this body, this ESIC, this integrity committee, at least their investigations lead somewhere from the sounds of it. All right, let's move on. Can we talk about this one was kind of a fun one. Well, I know William had something to say about this. You go from something very heavy to something very light. This is from Ars Technica, and the headline here was that time Roger Ebert said games will never be as worthy as movies. And it says here from the archives, 15 years ago around Thanksgiving, Ebert set video game internet ablaze. I will read what he said here. He says, Ebert does not believe, Roger Ebert, the famed movie critic for the Chicago Sun-Times and co-host of the syndicated TV show Ebert and Roper at the Movies, has thrown down the gauntlet on his website by stating that video games will never be as artistically worthy as movies and literature. Ebert does not believe that this quality gap can ever be crossed, as he feels it is a fundamental limitation on the medium itself. Quote, there's a structural reason for that. Video games by their nature require player choices, which is the opposite of the strategy of serious film and literature, which requires authorial control.
Okay,
William, you're just raring to go after this one.
I just literally want to blow this up.
This didn't age well. Let's start with that.
Oh, it did. It aged terribly. But I want to blow it up with 4 words. Choose your own adventure, Robert Ebert. How do you answer that? How do you... No one's laughing at that? That's
Why is that your response?
Because that's a book series that doesn't exercise authorial control, right?
But I don't know if he would have called that art either.
He wouldn't have. I'm making a joke. I thought it was funnier when I said it. But look, the fundamental thing is, like, first of all, I was not aware that a precursor for art was absolute authorial control, right? And if that's the case, I think a lot of modern art, which arguably I'm on the fence about anyway, but for the purpose of this, I think a lot of modern art would beg to differ with you, which relies on interactivity. Right? That's one, right? 2 is I would look at things that I think it's difficult if you also apply that standard to look at other art, like look at what theater companies do, like Punch Drunk out of the United Kingdom, right? You can't have that and say, okay, those guys are doing, which is, I think anyone would say is clearly artistic and of actually significant artistic value. But then that clearly has a very limited authorial control. But the bigger thing is, why is authorial, why at all is that a precursor for something to be art, in any way? And it also assumes that just because a director of video games doesn't exert all the choices, they aren't exerting many, many choices. And there is tons of decision-making and curation and creativity and structural, thematic, storytelling. All the stuff is baked into games. We don't need to litigate this again because this argument has been lost. The guy was wrong then. He's wrong now. Duh. But it is shocking how badly wrong he seems. That's why I was excited to put this on the live stream. Because, I get 15 years ago, okay, it was Sonic on Sega Genesis or whatever. Maybe I'm a little too old. But, the stuff wasn't that impressive. I defy you to play New God of War and tell me that is not an artistic experience and Corey Baylog is not an artist. I just defy. And by the way, I think if Roger Ebert actually played that game today, he would say the same thing too, right? I think it's the case that this opinion is, it shows you when people say things now. We talked on the podcast about, is esports going to be an Olympics? And there's a viewpoint which is, oh, there's no way it's ever just you wait, guys. 15 years ago, we didn't think this would get here, and here we are. Who knows what's going to happen in 2035? But definitely not flying cars. Those never happen, apparently.
Here's how Roger Ebert would reply to you, William, and I'll tee this up for Lindsay and Jeff. He would say this, and I'm quoting again from this article. I am prepared to believe that video games can be elegant, subtle, sophisticated, challenging, and visually wonderful. but I believe the nature of the medium prevents it from moving beyond craftsmanship to the stature of art. To my knowledge, no one in or out of the field has ever been able to cite a game worthy of comparison with the great dramatists, poets, filmmakers, novelists, and composers. That a game can aspire to artistic importance as a visual experience, I accept, but for most gamers, video games represent a loss of those precious hours we have available to make ourselves more cultured, civilized, and empathetic.
What a snooze. Wrong.
So are we all becoming
Well
less cultured,
spoken. Yeah.
civilized, and empathetic, guys, is the question.
No.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. To determine
but
what
this
people
goes to,
can and
like,
can't find art is insane to me.
Well, this goes to a
There's an
larger-
interesting study, I feel like, Lindsay, that I feel like there's some research report in here somewhere, which is if you could somehow objectively give something a score of how much it is art, right? Like this is 89% art or this is 100% art, right? Like if there was some objective way of scoring something as art or not, right? I would love to see how well that correlates to game sales.
So I'm not a big art guy, so I would say the correlation between, it would be like this. So as something becomes more art, it becomes less entertaining. Video games are entertaining. So who cares how this guy who is he dead? He might be dead.
He is dead.
Who cares how
Oh,
he
I didn't
defines
realize
art?
that. I thought he was still alive.
It's such a, I guess maybe I'm just like such a cynic about art. Like why, the banana on the wall that somebody buys for $5 million that's rotting. Like that literally, someone remember that like a couple years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah.
It's like, why is that art and a video game not art? I just don't care. I mean, it's entertaining. Video games are entertaining.
In movies as a genre, like we're talking about, silent films that were objectively horrible.
Yeah.
And then now, obviously, we have good movies, great movies, super artistic movies. But we also, I just watched the entire Oceans franchise last week. I wouldn't call that art, but I would call it fun, and I liked it better than some of these artsy movies. I don't.
I love the way nobody here is going to bat for modern art or classic
Yeah.
cinema. Everybody here is just like, no, Francois Truffaut made bad movies.
Martin says the author doesn't get to choose what meaning and significance others get out of their art. This is true.
Although I like that we we're obsessed with putting art. Like this is the same thing as esports. Like I'll think there's a good way to close kind of the point, or maybe is like we always try to put it like esports. Is it a sport? Is it not? Like the reality is these buckets we have for things are semantics, and they're not particularly useful to actually discuss. Like so what? Let's say we all agree esports isn't a sport. Is it not important as a social trend? Is it not important as a viewership experience? Is it not important as a competitive experience? Like the labels you put on things, where we have a really fun time saying like, this is the box with its label in it. This thing doesn't fit in it. So, it can't do this, but it's a semantic argument. And I think the art, our game's art debate is a similar shade of this. But we do this with everything. Like there's this whole thing of, can you read authorial background and intent into the works? Like if you're reading a book, does the artist's personal opinions, how they grew up, how he or she, fell in love, can you compare that? Is that a valid thing to compare to the text? Because clearly it influenced the author when they were writing, but it's not in the text, right? This even goes back to like constitutional law, like originalism, right? We love to try to have these firm dividing lines on works that require interpretation because they help us. But the reality is they're just that. They're arbitrary dividing lines. There is no absolute standard for this. And I think Lindsay said it very well. Some games are kind of bad. Like, I don't know. I just give you an example of a game I really liked. I wouldn't say it's art, right? Like, I like Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I don't think Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is art. Sorry, I know some people will blame me. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a very fun game, right? Just like Lindsay likes Ocean's 11. Is it high art on the vein of, I don't know, American Beauty? Is that what the people are citing right now was like, I don't know, but like, it's just, who cares? Like, it's all part of it's a medium, it's expression, and there is creativity and intent and interpretation present. So it should by any means meet the standards that you seek,
Chris says shades of Colin Cowherd. I hope you're not comparing any one of us to him.
I hope you're saying that.
I do want to know what that was referenced to.
But I'm assuming you're comparing Ebert to him. I will say this: the capitalist in me has a very easy solution to this, which is the more it sells, the more important it is. Right? The more dollars it makes, the more important it is.
Well, at least that's like an objective measure, though, that doesn't rely on like, like what if I came back and I was like, it must exist in in 3 dimensions, real or simulated. You know, like that's the standard. So all paintings can't be art. Like, you know, it doesn't matter. It's just your belief. They're just putting your drawing lines on the box, but it doesn't matter.
Let's talk about another. This one might hit home for some people who are watching right now, because I think it's been everyone's struggle. Chris says Colin Cowherd shit on esports 5 years ago on HBO Real Sports. Chris, I don't think I've seen that clip. I do know he does regularly shit on many people, though, and that's kind of his thing. But I wanted to talk about this because rarely do I find esports articles or gaming articles in People magazine, but this was one of them. And People magazine had an article, man waits 36 hours outside of gaming store to buy Sony's much sought after PlayStation 5. The subheadline is people are going through great lengths to pick up the latest PlayStation gaming console. There's not much else to the article. The guy waited a long time. He waited 36 hours. And what's interesting is the buyer supposedly said he's just planning on selling it and making a quick $300. So after all that, he wasn't even going to keep it.
Content? Like, do you think Sony like paid for this? This is just a weird article. There's no point to it, like whatsoever. Or is it just like, hey, it's a slow week. People magazine, like, let's write an article about people buying a consumer electronic on Cyber Monday. Like, that's the hottest thing that hasn't come out in the last 8 to 10 years. Like, what?
I will say, Jeff, that I've never seen such widespread frenzy, though. Not like all new console releases have this, right? But I will say, like, I needed to buy a PC case, and every one I want is out of stock, right? Like PC cases. Well, and we're not even at the holidays yet, right? Like,
yeah,
there's so much shortage of literally everything. I think that's the unprecedented part. What made this article somewhat humorous for me was 36 hours doesn't seem like that long to wait for something. Like, where are the stories of the people who waited like 8 days for the latest iPhone, right? That's a story. This guy probably didn't even have to like sleep there. Didn't even have to bring a sleeping bag.
I just also want to know if he was the only one, because that would just be a little awkward. And if so, if he was the only one, he definitely could have showed up later.
Well, you missed the best part of that story.
How did People magazine find out about this? Like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
People magazine made the editorial decision to replace GameStop, because he was at a GameStop, with Gaming Store. So that should tell you the power and reach of GameStop brands into mainstream America. If the editor edited out specificity for a longer set of words.
Well, GameStop probably didn't pay the ransom that People magazine wanted them to pay. They were like, Sony, give us, $2 million for this advertisement. GameStop, give us $500,000.
I really don't think this was a paid article. To me, this is one of these examples, and I like them as sort of landmarks in the growth of the industry, where you see a gaming story sort of jump into the mainstream. Like, to me, it's a silly, stupid article. The guy didn't even wait that long. He got his PS5 and then he resold it, right? Like, the article is fluff for the most part. But the fact that People magazine wrote a gaming story about tough to get consumer electronics, right, to me says this must be a big problem, right? Like, this must be a big moment when People magazine is covering it. I don't know if you guys see it the same way.
A big moment for the console or a big moment for gaming?
Gaming in general, right? You could point to these moments.
Console.
What's that, Lindsay?
It seems more like a big moment for the console. They've just like been all over social media. I mean, there's just been tons of stories about the console release where it is more reminiscent to me of an iPhone than it is indicative that the gaming market is now reaching into the gossip market.
But it's like the first time Ninja was on the Today Show. Like, it's these kinds of moments where gaming culture crosses over into more mainstream culture that I think is interesting. And as fluffy as the story is, those moments have some importance, I think, long term, right? Like, my mom reads People magazine. She would not have any clue about shortages of, consoles or any other gaming equipment if she doesn't see it in People magazine.
So I'll play devil's advocate. I think I probably agree with your point, but I guess I'll play devil's advocate for just a second. It kind of, when they write the article the way they wrote it, it sort of treats gaming almost like a fad. Like, you saw these articles when like Tickle Me Elmo was like sold out of stores. I'm sure you saw the same thing. So, to some extent, it's like, it's still sort of written with the connotation of like, oh, look at that weird gamer who like did something weird. And like, we should all sort of like get a good laugh that this person waited 36 hours for this console, rather than like, hey, there's an important event happening and people care about it. The way it was written sort of made it seem like it sort of doesn't do gaming the justice that maybe your argument was doing it. I mean, that's the devil's advocate view, at least.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't think People magazine was going to write the hard-hitting, like, gaming is sort of gaming has arrived kind of article. Like, I wasn't expecting that to come out of People magazine.
I don't think you understand the fine quality journalism happening. People magazine. And
true.
Their ability to predict trends and keep the reader informed of current new things.
I agree. And they're clearly caught on to a trend, which I think most people are just oblivious to, right? Like, if you're not out shopping for some kind of gaming or consumer electronic in the last few months, you would not have any idea the sort of the scale of the shortage. Mark says, been watching the podcast for the past month or so. First live show. Just wanted to say hi, Mark. So glad to have you. Thank you for coming. And please ask questions, participate. We love having you here. Chris says, I'm sure there was a similar article written in 1998 when everyone was trying to find Super Mario 3. Chris, I agree with you, but I feel like the frenzy has gotten higher, like it's more frenzied, and the shortages are greater. I don't think I've ever seen a year where just about everything is so hard to get. It's anecdotal, but in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen this. And that, to me, says something about where the industry is going. William, you're awfully quiet. You haven't been trying to get an Xbox or a PS5 or a graphics card or
an Xbox and a PS5, but unfortunately, they're sold out everywhere, as you're saying, Paul. No, I don't know. This is one where I don't feel like I got a lot to add. Like, I think it's a fun story, but it's also kind of like, it's People magazine covering PlayStation 5 shortage. Like, what are you gonna do?
So in true live stream fashion, we're introducing a new segment this week because we have to have a new segment basically every week. What's that?
Yeah, it's the new segment.
It's the new segment. And this one is Paul pats himself on the back.
I thought that was the main sponsor of the podcast.
I'm pretending to walk away. You guys laugh at that or the segment name?
This one's an article from Clutch Points, and it is Dr. Disrespect fires shots on mobile gaming. So me and the doc both in agreement on this. The article talks about him, sort of his latest tirade on mobile gaming, and I'll just read his tweet here. I've got 3 state-of-the-art 1 millisecond speed, color-calibrated monitors staring at me, a keyboard with Titan Switch optical keystrokes, and a mouse that weighs literally nothing, backed by a $200,000 multi-PC setup, and you have the guts to tell me mobile gaming is a serious thing. only the doc could pull off such a tweet. And he had someone, I actually don't know who Ferg plays for. I don't know if he's with an org, but he replied to Dr. Disrespect saying 1v1 on COD Mobile for $100,000, you on your PC and I'll play mobile. I'll just say, I'll add, I was this tempted to take him up on this. And then Ryan Wyatt, who is the the leader at YouTube Gaming for all of his faults and their faults, added that, and Nobrew is pulling 4 times the live viewership than you just playing from his phone. So there's this back and forth on mobile gaming. I know we've talked about it, but does Dr. Disrespect's views change anyone's opinions here? Do you think he has the star power to change the way the industry looks at mobile esports specifically? Because I think we all agree mobile gaming is a thing. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be huge. It is huge. I'm talking really about mobile esports, like competitive gameplay on mobile phones.
Why would our view on this not be exactly the same as our view on what is art? Like, just because Dr. Disrespect doesn't think mobile gaming is gaming, if people were playing mobile games and enjoy it, why do we have to go, turn our nose at them and say, hey, you're not actually a gamer, you're not actually gaming, you're not actually doing esports if you're playing. Mobile esports are popular. You could argue that it's a gateway drug and it's only popular because it's in the regions where people don't have PCs or can't access PCs. So that's why mobile gaming is popular currently. But like you said, it's clearly a trend that is happening. So, I think as an industry, we should embrace it rather than kind of like same way we laughed at Roger Ebert when games aren't art. I think we should laugh at Dr. Disrespect just as much for saying mobile games aren't games. I mean, that's my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
he's not saying that, just to be clear. I don't think that's what he's saying. He just doesn't think they should be competitive esports.
I mean, not to mention,
and to be clear, not every prediction by anyone is always wrong, right?
Yeah, well, you could say, hey, I have the choice to play both and I choose PC because it's better. But to say that, he also sounds like a complete asshole talking about his multi-$100,000 setup and then being like, oh, well, what you're doing isn't real. Just like, dude, come on. Like, no, you just, I don't know. I get that he has a shtick, but like that rubs me the wrong way a little bit.
Okay, well, how does this tweet feel to you?
I saw you had a post on LinkedIn about mobile gaming, right? Or mobile esports.
Yeah. So this was an offshoot of Dr. Disrespect's tweet, right? And because someone replied to him specifically saying, well, Dr. D, not everyone can afford a good PC setup, and that's why mobile gaming is so popular in Southern Asian countries. I'm with him so far. Mobile gaming, very popular, right? And then he says, anyways, I don't hear any mobile gamers fighting for validation as a gamer. If you want to play in mobile and have fun, who cares? I agree with that too, right? I think where Dr. Disrespect, and I'm putting words in his mouth because you can interpret his tweet a lot of ways, right? Mm-hmm. But I believe the spirit of his tweet is all about competitive mobile esports, right? Like competition between people playing on mobile devices is not something serious in his mind. And I think that's where the not everyone can afford a good PC falls apart. Because if we're talking about a form of entertainment, accessibility in my mind no longer applies, which is the comment I made, right? People make this argument. Mobile esports will take off because not everyone can afford a gaming PC. But if we follow that logic, right, we'd all be watching lawnmower racing because we can all afford lawnmowers. But no one can afford an F1 car, so no one would be watching F1 racing, right? My mind, accessibility has nothing to do with entertainment value.
I love you so much, Paul, but like you're just so wrong sometimes. It just hurts.
I will come back 15 years from now and pat myself on the back again when I am so right about mobile esports.
You're completely on the wrong side of history here. You are. It's the same. Jeff's right. It's the same as the artistic debate. And anyway, this whole argument of like, okay, lawnmower racing isn't a sport, so this but I can think of tons and tons and tons of counterexample where the lower cost alternative is far more popular, right? What's a good example of this right now? Okay, so bocce, or whatever I want to say, traditional polo is far more popular. Is it bocce? What's the game where you hit lawn darts? That's it. Is far more popular than polo because people don't own horses, right? That's my go-to example, polo, because the horse thing is expensive, right? It's not a big it's just it doesn't prove your point. And the bigger thing here is it matters that people can play the sport. It really does matter. The thing about F1 driving is the fundamental premise behind F1 racing is who can go the fastest, who can build the fastest car. So speed is inherent to the entertainment value of that product. And so, yeah, it would be boring watching a lawnmower race an F1 car because obviously the F1 cars go faster. It is possibly true that certain esports, there is an inherent drive for higher processing power or more pixels or whatever to increase the engine. But for the vast majority of them, it's not true. And I just go back to Hearthstone. You can play Hearthstone on mobile. That is an esport. I win. It is also true that many games on mobile aren't good games and probably pretend to be esports when they're not, and they're not competitive. But that's back when Roger Ebert 15 years ago was looking at video games, most of them were Sonic the Hedgehog 2. They might be fun to play, but they weren't going to leave you up at night wondering, is Sonic and Tails, did Tails really come to terms with the passing of his mother 13 years earlier?
Chris says, funny, I argued with Golden Boy about this, more of esports trying to find something to make a profit. Yes, Chris, you're right. It's the novelty of the day, and it's easy to monetize. Amazon tried to push mobile gaming competition in Vegas, and everyone walked right past the players. Also correct. No one wants to see anyone thumbing around on their phones. It's not entertaining. This is what William misses, is that entertainment value is king. It's not about accessibility, and there's nothing entertaining about watching someone playing on a phone. Mainstream North Americans aren't going to watch people play with their phone for big money. Also agree. Guys who play games on their phones are so marketable. That is sarcasm, I'm assuming. And who's watching lawn darts? Yes, William.
Probably the same amount of people watching polo.
Lawn darts was a stupid example.
So, Paul, if your argument was true, wouldn't the numbers not prove out that people are watching mobile esports? Look at Garena Free Fire. It's arguably a top 5 esport in terms of viewership, on streaming. So why, if the case were it would just be better for them to watch Apex or CS:GO, why are people watching mobile esports?
Should be a point.
I think there's definitely a novelty factor, right? And there's the factor of I play the game, so I'll watch the game. The question is, let's come back to me 15 years from now and see if any of these things hold true. And I can almost guarantee you none of them will. Those leagues, those games, those tournaments, they're not sustainable. Mobile games have an even shorter shelf life than PC sports, right? Mobile games come and go. And I think the audiences for them will be even more short-lived. So while it's hot today, there's a novelty today, they're easy to monetize, they're easy to broadcast. The risk is so much lower than trying to put on an Overwatch League style thing, right? We will see a lot of it. The question is, come back to me 15, 20 years from now, I can almost guarantee you we will see none of it. That the industry will have grown out of that phase.
I rebuttal to that, and I'm sorry to keep cutting off. Whenever I get passionate about an argument, I tend to just do that. It's a bad character trait. But I guess my point is, anytime we're talking about 15 years in the future in any sort of technology, how confident are you that any platform is going to be the dominant platform in 15 years, right? If we were all going to bet on it, we'd probably say VR esports would be the future in 15 years. I think I've heard you talk about that in the past, Paul, that's something you're pretty confident about. I can tell you we're not going to be using, Xbox Series X, but does that mean Xbox Series X?
We're not going to be doing this in an immersive VR environment. We're going to be doing this,
why is that a problem?
You guys are. This is not me on my PC high horse. This is me just saying I know mobile won't be it.
I could also say the exact same thing about PC. PC esports probably won't be happening in 15 years.
I totally agree with you.
Why is
the way VR is going at the speed it's going? We will not be using this 15 years from now.
Okay, okay, so then why are we knocking mobile for not being around in 15 years when I could say the exact same thing about PC?
Good point, Jeff. Nailed it.
Because I'll tell you that PC will have a longer life than mobile esports will. Let's put it that way.
Fine. That's a more reasonable argument, I think.
Yes, but how much
Can you
longer?
high five through the box with me, Jeff? Can you?
VR, to me, the VR future, the VR
This
esports
side,
future is a very like binary kind of tipping point because it relies on technological innovation to happen, right? Not on an industry trend, not on dollars flowing, not like there's no other factors other than the technology has to get to a point where the experience is good enough to drive an entirely new way of thinking about gaming, right? And that technology. What were you going to say, William?
I just think it's a hard thing to bet. I would rather bet on accessibility time in, time out. I think one thing that
for a player, not for entertainment. I'm with you on playing.
I think people would rather watch sports they play and understand.
Do well at the games that you're playing. I think William's right. I mean, William wrote a whole little book about this. Accessibility is a massive factor in what esports, become popular, and mobile is the most accessible. So I do think that does matter. And even you see the traditional sports, like the most accessible traditional sports, soccer, you literally just need a ball. Basketball, you literally just need a ball. Those are much more popular than polo, where you need a horse. And I think William's right. We could do another.
The other piece about it is, I would argue that we can do it, Jeff. We can get it to work.
There you go.
Oh, he took it away. There we go. Now we can do across the thing. Across the thing. Yeah. It was not as satisfying as I thought.
Everything's like a mirror, So you gotta. It's
so
the opposite.
But the other piece of this is like I would argue, why does my mom not like watching the LCS? I genuinely don't think it's because the LCS isn't entertaining. It's really entertaining. I think she doesn't like watching the LCS. She has no idea what's happening in it. She doesn't understand what the heroes do, what the objective is, why it takes skill. How do you appreciate that? You play League. I really think accessibility is like your prime factor here. And I think it outweighs, look, are there better and more sophisticated input methods? Yes. But I could argue that playing, Steel Battalion is the ultimate experience because it requires an 86-button Xbox hookup controller, right? That is arguably a far more sophisticated input method than WASD and a mouse. But we didn't care about that. Like, Steel Battalion isn't the be-all, end-all of competitive shooters, By the way, huge shout-outs to me referencing Steel Battalion. I don't know if anybody knows, but I'm just, so high on myself for bringing that up. So my point is, it's not about sophistication or skill cap. Skill cap is important, but I would say accessibility wins 9 times out of 10 in the balancing act between skill and access. Because at the end of the day, you just need there to be a difference between high-level players. If the game is deep enough to tease out differences between high-level people, that is a sufficient standard for competition. And honestly, there's good arguments to say there shouldn't even be that high a teasing out at the top level. If you look at a lot of game design theory docs, they say 90-10. The most skilled player should win only 90% of the time. That appears to be optimal for driving gamer engagement. And again, I think I'm right here.
Stay tuned, guys. In 20 years, we'll see who was right. It will be me. So, little spoiler alert, because I'm right about just about everything else. And these guys just don't understand entertainment, unfortunately. I get the accessibility argument, and I love you guys for it. And I'm just
one comment I make before we move. I think the entertainment piece is something that you just mentioned that's really important. I think the esports that will do well and will do well in the future are the ones that can bring in that entertainment component, create the shoulder content, the stories around their players. And I know all the leagues are trying it, but I think the leagues that end up doing that the best will be the ones that really succeed. Because I always go back to the example of, watching Top Chef. I don't really like to cook. I don't know why I like watching Top Chef, but there's once in a while, my wife will be watching it and I get, you get into it because you start rooting for the guy. You hear he's playing for his mom died of cancer. He's going to donate the money to charity, and you get into it. I think, whoever builds the league within esports where they're kind of creating those stories and the characters, that's who's going to probably be the most popular, not hey,
Yeah.
this game is really, technically difficult, Steel Battalion, all that good stuff.
Short term, you guys will be right because the novelty value is still there, and because everyone's struggling to monetize the PC and console esports, and so mobile, if you can make some money doing that, everyone will turn to that in the short term. But I think history's on my side long term here. Chris says Paul with the
controller.
Paul with the production value for high fives. Bravo. Chris says Steel Battalion reference Collis OG. And until mobile gamers can get laid playing mobile games on Paul's side.
little risque there, Chris, for a LinkedIn broadcast.
This is truth. We had a couple of questions. I will say, let me just come back to them. Mark was asking, before we move on to the next topic, I just want to address Mark's question here and Ryan's question. Mark said, what are your thoughts on Riot's League of Legends community guidelines? To me, it seems like they completely limit the growth of amateur esports. I've seen tons of high schools cancel programs. Anyone have thoughts on that?
What are the new guidelines before I offer thoughts?
I mean, in general, I think you have to look at incentives, right? Like, what does Riot care in terms of amateur esports?
That's some of the reality is like I actually do think they have some reasons to care, but there's a lot of reasons why they don't want community events to be in any way competitive with their official broadcaster contents. They have lots of reasons to restrict. And at the end of the day, they have a pretty good amateur esports scene. It's called Ladder, and it works reasonably well for talent discovery and everything. So they have there is a path for competitive players that's accessible instantly everywhere. I think Riot would like to do a better job with high schools and colleges in niche cases. And I think that's probably fallen through the cracks based on some partnership decisions they've made that haven't necessarily come.
I was going to say the Playverse partnership, I think has been, at least, I don't know personally, but anecdotally from all the people we've talked to, from the reaction, like William and I spoke at a panel at PAX, and there was quite a few people in the room, and it was about sort of college and high school esports. Quite a few people in the room who were very, very unhappy with the Playverse offering. And I wouldn't be surprised if Riot at this point felt somewhat burned by that and are just exerting more control. You were going to say something, William.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish they had there would be a nice world where they would say everyone. And I think actually we're going to cover a story about this. This might be a really good segue into this Nintendo story, right? Do you think?
Yeah, I just want to get to Ryan's question first, and then we'll do.
Yeah. But we'll pick this up. But publishers have tons of incentives to restrict. Very, very few incentives to open up, honestly. So yeah, they probably are killing high school esports. It's a symptom of generally they'd rather control the content funnel or the game funnel, and they picked a partner specifically to manage this that sort of hasn't done a great job. And so you're seeing two symptoms coincide at the same time.
Ryan says, love the show. Thank you, Ryan. Do you guys think Cyberpunk will still be relevant by the time its multiplayer comes out? I mean, I don't know, a bit of a softball. I mean, I think yes, right? Like if you look at just some of the sales numbers for Cyberpunk, they're saying already pre-orders have outstripped total Witcher 3, I think, sales. So you're going to see huge numbers there.
GameStop is just killing it right now.
And Witcher. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know what is the timeline, Ryan, on their multiplayer. What guidance have they given? Because I haven't seen that.
So first of all, I know Ryan. Ryan and I actually used to work together at Stevens. Ryan's a stud tech analyst, actually, and a hardcore gamer. So what's up, Ryan? But my view on this is CD Projekt Red has never developed a multiplayer game, to the best of my knowledge. So it's going to take a while before this thing comes out. I think this is going to be way more like Red Dead Online than it is going to be like GTA Online. And I think investors that are buying the hype on CD Projekt Red, thinking this is the next, GTA Online, are going to be pretty sorely disappointed. It's really hard to build an online world that works and is alive and has the content. And I don't think CD Projekt has the development team stood up to do that. And, I think Cyberpunk's going to be a great game, and I think it'll sell, teens, high teens. Like maybe it sells as many copies as Red Dead Redemption in the first year, which is, I think, like low 20s. But, people were thinking it's going to be GTA. It's just not. It's a single player game. It's not going to sell as many.
But I mean, this is CD Projekt Red in a nutshell, right? You look at their revenue; it's lumpy, right? They come out with a game every few years. You get a huge bump, and then it sort of trails off, and then you get a huge game. And this is sort of what they're good at, is putting out these, very good, high quality single player games, essentially, in a very traditional kind of boxed copy model.
But I would also argue the stuff that they're good at is generally actually incompatible with a good multiplayer experience. And I think this is quite important to point out, because like the big thing is a good single player narrative games, which they do, are all about player impact on world and player progression. And they're all about essentially the player is the savior. They are a single person story. And for that to feel effective, you need to get really, really strong. You need to make lasting changes in the world, and you need to have a controlling impact on the outcome of the narrative, right? All of those things are mutually incompatible with multiplayer games, because I'm no longer the person driving the story along. There's thousands of other people doing it. I'm logging into a world where all of a sudden stuff is changing way beyond my control, and my actions can be undone or rewritten, or major plot events can be triggered outside of my control. And there's ways to get around this. There's instancing and things. But fundamentally, I think there's a reason why they haven't done multiplayer games before, and it's because the sort of experience they deliver isn't really what you want in multiplayer. In multiplayer, you want more quick, repeated, tight gameplay loop sessions. You want more skill-based play. And as much as great as I think The Witcher 3 is, I don't think anybody thinks that game is skill-based, like, at all, right? And they just haven't shown they can develop that stuff. So do I believe they can do a pretty good multiplayer game? Yeah. I'm sure it'll be pretty fun to explore Night City in multiplayer. But you're spot on, Jeff. It's going to be like Red Dead Redemption. You'll try it. It'll be cool to see other people's builds. You'll be like, man, that's a sweet Cyberpunk eye. And then it'll be like, oh, okay. That being said, I do think that this game has shelf life. I think Witcher 3 had long shelf life. This game's big. There's a devoted fan base. There's probably interesting expansion content they have planned. I think the base game will stick around for a while. I think multiplayer no one's going to care about. And I would confidently predict that.
This is why I just want to make sure we answer the question directly. Because with the way Ryan asked it, do you think Cyberpunk will still be relevant by the time its multiplayer comes out? To me, no question. It will still be a relevant title, a relevant brand, a relevant game by the time its multiplayer comes out. If you're asked the extension question of that, which is, do you think Cyberpunk's multiplayer will generate live service type revenue for CD Projekt Red when it comes out? I think the answer there is no. Right? It'll extend the shelf life of the base game a little bit longer, in my opinion. But I don't think we will see an entirely new business model for CD Projekt Red come out of this game.
The nuance I will put on it is they do talk about multiplayer as sort of a standalone, and they flip back and forth on this. They call it a mode, but they also have called it a standalone product, right? And I think it gets a lot more interesting if it's the standalone product, because I could see them leveraging the engine, the character design, the assets of Cyberpunk, and doing something more with it in a multiplayer context, right? I don't know. It's interesting, but like when publishers start talking of when they start talking about this as a standalone product, that must mean it's a totally different gameplay experience. So there's some interest there, but honestly, please don't mortgage your house for Cyberpunk multiplayer. Like, it's not going to happen.
Chris says, precisely why I work with schools in Vegas to create esports clubs versus esports teams. Yeah, the big orgs, the big companies that have been trying to attack that problem have not done very well. Grand Theft Auto 5 has been out how long? Of course, Cyberpunk lasts. I agree with that. I think where you gave sort of points to Jeff here, Chris, is that it's going to be more like Red Dead than GTA. But the game will definitely still be relevant.
In the entertainment world, comparing anything to GTA is just is obviously just a silly exercise because it's like literally the exception to any rule.
See, that's what William says about WoW, and I wait for the day. I hope for the day where you guys are both wrong, or one of you is wrong, right? Like, I hope for the day something kills WoW. I hope for the day something kills GTA. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that we create new experiences that kill those long-time category leaders. But I think you're both right in that they're virtually impossible to dethrone.
GTA 6 is the only thing that can kill GTA.
Yeah. William, you're muted. It wouldn't be a live stream without William muting himself at least once.
But to the point, like we never saw World of Warcraft 2. Like and clearly, Rockstar is not in a rush to launch GTA 6. They've let this go 2 console cycles now. So it goes back to things. Network effects are very, very powerful. And you very rarely see them manifest strongly. They're like K-scores for app virality, right? Like, it's extremely rare you see K-scores above 1. So when they pop out, you're like, oh my God, app development is an absolutely great business. I make an app and they tell 10 of their friends instantly. Like, how do I not make money? But it's, you can't take those edge cases as a thing. And in this case, those are games that are just, they're so propelled by so many virtuous self-fulfilling cycles. The only thing that can disrupt them is a publisher migration, and we have not seen publishers willing to do that to date. It's just neither of the major players.
Given that response, William, I don't want to steal the thunder from the podcast, but were you guys super bullish on Roblox? Because when I think network effects, I mean, they have the ultimate network. I mean, 30 million. I think it was daily active users. Was it daily or monthly active users?
Daily.
This is how bullish I am on Roblox. I literally took my entire retirement savings and I put it into Robux because I was like, I know how international currency markets work. Demand versus supply. There is arbitrage here.
Well, hold on, William. You had retirement savings left? I thought you would put all your retirement savings into Magic cards.
That too.
Did you sell the set?
You should do retirement investing with me. I will blow you guys out of the water with my prime asset class. Forget like money markets and like diversified investment strategies. It's Magic cards, Roblox, and maybe guys, I'll let you put some cash in like vintage champagne because that sounds cool.
No, definitely, Jeff. To your question, super bullish on Roblox to the point
how do you run it IPS? What's your market cap prediction
for Roblox?
Yeah,
40 billion.
Really? So you think it's going to be, EA size?
I think it will trade at a higher multiple than Unity's trading. In my minute this week, I did the math for those of you who listened to my minute. And if you look at the multiple of revenue that Unity's trading at, Roblox would be a $37 billion company.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, I don't think it will get the
big numbers. Like these are big, really big numbers.
41 billion. So I look more bullish than Paul. But yeah, you can very easily justify big valuations. 40 billion in a dollar.
I was going to say like
this isn't the Price is Right, William.
I mean, that's wow. Yeah, that's crazy. They did like 1 billion in bookings. Like it's going to trade 40 times revenue.
It's what Unity is trading at.
We live in a world where Tesla has a higher market cap than like GM. Like it's. I mean,
if you believe it's the future, right? Yeah. And I think where William and I'll speak for you, William. Stop me if I'm saying anything you don't agree with. I think we both agree that they are much better positioned to accomplish what Fortnite could have. Right? Build sort of a metaverse, build a universe that is much bigger than just a game, a platform that's much bigger than just a game, and that can evolve. Like, look, we just talked earlier, like, could it be an education platform for all we know? Could be recruiting for the CIA. Like, the sort of the sky's the limit. It's not hard to get to sort of really big valuations if you believe that this audience that they've captured, they can keep them there and deliver them all kinds of experiences.
Well, I agree with that, but I just thought at 15 billion that would encompass a lot of what you just said. At 40, we're talking about that's almost the size of how big is Activision? Like 60?
60, yeah.
And you're talking about Activision is doing more in free cash flow than they're doing in revenue by like 2. So,
but we both know, right, that the future is priced into these stocks, right? Yeah. And if you believe Roblox's future is brighter than Activision, or at least 2/3 as bright, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, right? Like, we'll definitely talk about it on the live stream when it does go public.
I'm sure you guys wouldn't remember this, but when I was on the podcast with you guys, like way back when I was an analyst, I said I thought Activision was going to buy Roblox. Clearly that didn't happen, but clearly they should have.
They should have.
I'm sure they were trying to.
But Bobby's too busy making mobile Diablo. That
well, I mean, you should.
Which will be an esport, Jeff and I think it'll be a huge esport.
I can't wait for you guys to go pro in
dude, I'm going to tell you right now, if there is, just to spite you, Paul, if there is a pro Diablo,
you'll feel the team.
Scene, not only will I feel the team, I will compete myself. I'll show up and I'll be like, it's really hard, Paul. It's really
all right. Let's actually, Jeff, since we're talking about Jeff being on the podcast, I just wanted to get your comments on this because it's related to your company, and when it's in the news, I figure it's worth talking about it. But what are the repercussions of this, Jeff? I don't know if you can explain it to the audience, what you guys are doing here.
Yeah, I mean, Canada for the longest time has, they haven't had legal single event, sports betting. They've had some fits and starts at bills to try to pass it. But now there's one that looks like it's gaining some momentum. So, when that does pass, we're going to, look to enter that regulated market through the legislative process. That's one of the things about EEG that we like to stay, out of the black markets. We're in the sort of regulated market. We're going to New Jersey, same way. But it's just another jurisdiction for us to be in. I think there were some articles saying that Canada was, between 10 and 15 billion handle size. So pretty similar to like a large state in the U.S., like a New Jersey type, state size. So It's a big opportunity for us, on the esports side. And then we also would bring our traditional sports betting product there, which is Sport Nation. We're probably not really planning to bring that to the U.S. just because there's a ton of competition. Canada, there wouldn't be as much competition, so we'd probably bring it there.
It's an interesting, do you think we'll ever see this in the U.S., where at a federal level you'll get this kind of legalization?
Well, I think what they're doing in Canada is similar, where this federal legislation will allow the provinces to then legalize, pretty similar to the U.S. So I think it will still be province by province.
And in the U.S., still state by state.
The U.S. is still state by state. I don't think, there's enough support to get a federal bill done. It would certainly make things a lot easier from an operator perspective. But I just think, there's too many states like a Utah and stuff like that you're not going to see a federal bill pass.
I mean, it's an interesting development. I will say, I wanted to put it on also because I was looking at our Spotify statistics for the podcast this week, and our year end had our Canadian audience growing at almost 300%. I don't know why we grew so much among our Canadian audience, because the Canadian audience was our second largest, right? Obviously next to the US audience. But it grew much faster than the US audience, in fact. So I thought,
finally getting support from your home country, Paul.
I know. Chris says, you handle Jersey, I'll reset Vegas. Some branding in there, Chris. Some free advertising in there for you.
You're good.
All right, guys. Our last story today, before we wrap up here. This one.
Hogger, here's the storm, Paul. You can put it in.
This one, Nintendo in the news. Daily Esports. Smash Brothers modding
So
community
mad about
shaken as videos are removed. And the segue here was from the question around how much power do developers have to control tournaments and limit the growth of amateur esports, limit the growth of content. I mean, this is a perfect example of Nintendo exerting their massive amount of control, where now they had been shutting down Smash Brothers tournaments. Now they're shutting down Smash modders on YouTube, issuing takedown requests for fan projects. I just want to know, I mean, Lindsay, curious to start with you here. Do you think this is too much weight being thrown around by developers? Like, do you think Nintendo goes too far, right? It's one thing to limit tournaments because you want to control the quality or whatever, but to stop people from creating content around your game, is this a step too far?
Yes, I think it is. This is just talking about Roblox. This is actually a good opportunity to bring that in because, as William pointed out, they really nailed the two-sided market thing between developers and end users. And this is always, this is the problem with developers having kind of A to Z control over the games, is that they can do things like this. So if we're talking about if they're doing anything that they can't do, no, it's perfectly within their purview to do this to content creators. If it's things that they should do, they shouldn't be doing this. I mean, the way that you continue to build a community, to hype up your games, to do all of this is to allow modifications, to allow creativity, to put that art into it and send that art out to the world. So this is really disheartening, honestly. And I'm sure that the people who did mod it feel the same way. Nintendo, I guess, has a little bit of a tradition of this, though, so it's not necessarily surprising either.
Maybe Nintendo doesn't think it's art.
Right. Maybe they don't. They certainly don't, actually, from the way they act towards it.
There's also a nuance here you guys missed, which is for things like Smash Brothers, right? Like, you actually have to have modding to make many of the old things playable, right? There's just, like, in our modern world, like, you can't do online play for, like, classic SMB without modding, right? So I think that was actually some of the issues behind some of the tournament stuff that's taken in place in the past too, by the way. But look, what this comes down to is, can they do it? Yes, 100% they can do it. Duh, content creator. The question is, should they be doing it? And this goes back to live streaming and Twitch and content creation. And I think a couple podcasts ago, we had that conversation with the Stadia guy who said, like, oh, players should pay the game creators. And you're sort of seeing, like, and what the time we said is, look, if the games companies really thought that the live streaming was bad for business or that they were owed money, they could shut it down. We see this proved out exactly here with Nintendo shutting down modding, but it also raises the question, why was this bad? Like, how was this hurting Nintendo sales? I think the only thing I'm willing to concede here is the IP risk, right? That one thing Nintendo is very good about, because they have some of the best IP in the business. Really, they do. Like, Mario's the best IP in games. You can't change my mind, right? Is they are very sensitive to any sort of legal weakening of their IP control. And it is definitely true that if they allow some good modding, there sort of is an argument. It's a very weak backdoor, but there is a backdoor open, which is, you weren't enforcing on that. I did this. I thought it would be okay too, right? So from an IP protection standpoint, I understand why they do it. But again, Nintendo reverses course all the times on this. They reversed with Twitch. They've reversed in the past with tournaments, although this time, who knows? I suspect this is another kind of short-sighted, where it's only us, only the corporate headquarters in Kyoto, get out of here, right? And over time, you'll see this soften because, like, otherwise these fan communities for games like Smash Brothers won't exist, and the next title won't sell as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just throw out a tinfoil conspiracy here?
Ooh, lay it on me.
Love it.
Nintendo does this on purpose for the free marketing. Think of all the hashtag free Smash tweets, all the conversation, all the articles like this. It's free Smash Brothers advertising. And it's the old adage, right? Any publicity is good publicity.
No,
this is all very purposeful.
A more
Nintendo
likely scenario is Nintendo is planning re-releases of the classic Smash games and doesn't want competitive product in market. And I'd like that. I'm sorry, Paul. I wish it was that. It's probably more they just did the Mario Odyssey collection that was a big hit that were released, like Mario 64 and stuff. they're looking at their perennial bestsellers. Smash is on the list. They're like, oh shoot, we can't release N64 Smash if there's a better online mod version out there. But
Martin says the real story was them shutting down Melee tournaments made possible through a mod emulating online, a game people can't even buy legally anymore.
That's just so
I mean, they have this history of very heavy-handed kind of enforcement.
unless they're re-releasing Melee, Martin. I'm just saying.
or it's guerrilla marketing for a game you can't buy. Gotta understand the traditional mindset of Nintendo. They've been around way longer than esports. Yeah, I think, Chris, that is the crux of it. We've talked about Nintendo in that context too, and the cultural sort of uniqueness of Japanese game companies. Martin says some guy quit his job and created an online mod for Melee in 6 months that is smoother than the current games online on Switch. They should be hiring that guy from the sounds of it. If they don't want grassroots tournaments making all the money off their 19-year-old game, then they should get involved. Why, like, truthfully, we joke about sort of the tinfoil hat kind of scenarios, but they must realize there is money to be made here, right? They must realize there's a very hardcore base of fans who would support this, who would participate, who would spend money. Why have they avoided it? What's the business reason here? Right? Like, I'm sure there's someone smart at Nintendo that built that business case that says
Nintendo is super owned and controlled. Why did they delay putting Mario on phones for so long? Why do we still not have a good port of Mario, SNES to the mobile device? Like, Nintendo is not a company that optimizes off of revenues. They never have been. They're not going to be. They're a company that, if anything, optimizes off of sort of brand quality and premium, which I think is arguable. I think a better thing is they're super fuddy-duddy old-fashioned in terms of how they think about things, and they'd rather be incredibly slow and even wrong than risk taking a misstep. And that's all across every single thing Nintendo's ever done. It's why Mario barely crosses up with any interesting IP. 90% of it is Nintendo owned, and the barest of bone stuff that isn't is super safe. Like, the most fringe you get is Metal Gear Solid. Where's my Mortal Kombat versus Mario mod? That's what
God.
I want, Like, but the point is, because their IP
traumatized kids everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they will have a very specific ways that they want to make money and a very specific reputation that they want to keep. And that really gets in the way of a lot of the stuff that they could be doing, which is so sad.
Well, Lindsay, how do you feel about Martin's thought here? They avoid it because our games are not meant to be competitive. It's a casual party game in their eyes.
I agree with the first half. I'm not sure if I see it as a casual party game. I think they want to be like a really family friendly kind of. I mean, the very first system, it was even called the FamCon. I mean, I think it's.
But is competition not family friendly? Is that what you're saying?
That
is sort of.
They are, to William's point. I think they're extremely
why do you
risk-averse to the
care? Like, this is what I'm getting. Like, if I launched a party game that I thought was a great party game, and all of a sudden it had a sports scene that exploded around it, I'd be like, whoa, I got super lucky with that party game. And I'd call my executives guy and be like, guys, we got to lean into this competitive thing. It's really working. I don't know why people think party board is, but like, it's not what they've done. And again, they clearly, they don't have the market cap that they could have, right? Like, they just don't. They're not one of the biggest. They're a very large game company. They are not the biggest game company in the world, despite, I think, having the best IP and doing things like owning. It goes back to how they manage themselves. They don't take risks.
What is Nintendo's market cap today?
Probably 60 billion, 70 billion.
Market cap.
Let's check, actually.
I'm
curious.
Because I'm curious if Unity at 40. 7.45 trillion yen. So I don't know what
So that's 60 billion. Yeah, Jeff's right. Rough and tough. Divide by 100-ish. That's how I get it. Yeah, dollars is about 100.
It'd be interesting if Roblox at 40 billion compared to a Nintendo
but like
at 60.
That's the point, is like, which IP do you think is more valuable? Like, they don't. I think Nintendo could be worth 10 times what it's worth today. But they should have TV series and cartoons and a family network. And they don't do any of that stuff. And it's not that it's not good ideas. It's just they take zero risks.
Mhm.
And part of it too, I think, is historically it's been a very family-run company until recently. And I think their attitude was, we've been around since 1983 or 1883. We're going to keep being around, and we'd rather make less money and be certain. Which is sort of ironic because they took some of the biggest risks ever in the 80s with their launch of the Nintendo home console system. But I do think the prevailing win today is we've won enough. Let's just keep winning in our little area. You know,
they do have an activist investor in there now, so maybe, you know, I think they sort of made a deal with the board. Like, they're not going activist necessarily, but I think it's Value Act. Correct me if I'm wrong. Who is
That'd be interesting.
the most respected, you know, the activist investor out there. I mean, they crushed it with Microsoft. I think they did, you know, Adobe, a couple other massive wins for them. So who knows? Maybe the winds of change are kind of coming. But yeah, I think everything you guys have said is entirely accurate. You know, it's been said a lot of times, but it's just not Nintendo's culture.
Chris mirrors the same thought here. New York Times article that released today about Japanese business mindset focused on legacy, not quick profit. Martin says, tweet from President Furukawa, esports in which players compete on stage for prize money as an audience watches demonstrates one of the wonderful charms of video games. It's not that we're opposed to it, so that our games can be widely enjoyed by anyone regardless of experience, gender, or age. We want to be able to participate in a wide range of different events. Our strength, what differentiates us from other companies, is this different worldview, not an amount of prize money. It's interesting. They don't see it jiving with their brand and their worldview. And you got to respect that level of conviction at the expense of profit. It's almost like a breach of their fiduciary duties, though, in some sense, right? Like, if you know there's profit to be had and you're actively avoiding it. I don't know. Yeah. If I was a Nintendo shareholder, I guess I'd probably be happy over the last 5 years, but I wouldn't be like, I don't know if they're really sort of living up to their potential.
Yeah, I mean,
the stock price has tripled in the last 5 years, so I'd be happy.
So bad the decade before that, but yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
Guys, on that note, that brings us to, unless anyone has anything else they want to talk about, that brings us to our weekly. What are we playing this week? What are we playing this week, guys? William, you always have something interesting.
I mean, I wish I could say that. Heroes of the Storm. I mean, New Heroes out, but I will say I have played a little of the Pathless. I think I've said that again. I don't recommend that to people. I'm sorry. And then honestly, I wish I could say I was playing a cool indie game or something this week, but like, I've been super busy at work. Nothing else. I am basically not going to start a new game until Cyberpunk at this point. Like, I'm not going to open something up and then enjoy it and not give it the full service when I have to set it aside for the entree that will be delivered shortly. So, are you going to play Cyberpunk beginning to end? I'm going to do what I do with a little over a week. CD Projekt Red game I've ever played. I'm going to get super hyped for it. I'm going to play it for 7 hours. I'm going to be like, this is so cool, but it's way too big. And I kind of am a completionist. And I don't really know what's going on. And I sort of forget where I was last time. And this is really difficult. And then I'm never going to play it again. So you don't think you'll finish it? No, no way. Based on my track record with CD Projekt Red games, not even close. Lindsay?
I didn't play anything, but I found a really awesome YouTube channel called Girlfriend Reviews that I've been watching a lot of. And
is it girlfriend reviewing games?
Yep. Yeah. She watches her boyfriend play them and then gives reviews based on the watch experience, which is perfect for me since I spend a lot of time watching them playing. And it's very funny and fun. So yeah, I do recommend it.
Does she not play at all?
She doesn't really. I think she played a little bit of Phasmophobia, but he was scaring her in real life while she was playing, so she quit kind of early.
Interesting. Conan O'Brien did a series, not similar, but like he did a series called Clueless Gamer. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. Mm-hmm. It was really clever. Where he knows nothing about games. He doesn't play any games, but every couple of weeks he would review a game, and it's hilarious. Clueless Gamer. I highly recommend looking it up if you guys haven't seen it. With Conan O'Brien.
The scenery, the music, all the things that don't matter. It's great. It's really fun.
Martin agrees with you. Girlfriend Reviews is hilarious.
It's really funny. Yeah.
Jeff, we said you had to make something up this week.
Normally I have nothing here, but this week, I got my Xbox out. And you'll never guess the game I played.
Madden.
Steel Battalion. It's this new game. Just can't say with a straight face. I get points though. The Steel Battalion reference.
You played
No. If you really want OG cred in anything, just reference Steel Battalion. Be like, back when I was auto ejecting in Steel Battalion.
So I crushed a couple.
For the record, I did play quite a bit of Steel Battalion.
I knew you would. I was waiting for that. I was like, Paul, that is the game. That game
because I was an original Mech Warrior fan, big time, huge Mech Warrior fan.
Expensive, unnecessary peripheral, which is still totally awesome. And I'm sorry, I can't hide my love for Steel Battalion. Is amazing. I can't even criticize it. You're right to like it.
You played the new season of Fortnite, right, Jeff?
I did, but I did see on YouTube the big event that everyone seemed to watch.
Did you actually watch it?
I watched about a minute of it.
Okay.
Steel Battalion was better though.
Steel Battalion was better.
It was very boring. It wasn't super popular.
Yeah.
Chris says, thanks for letting me sped off every week. One day we'll have drinks in Vegas. Chris, thank you for just being here every week. We're the ones who should be thanking you. And I will take you up on the drinks in Vegas. I am guaranteed to be there in 2021 at some point. So we will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Greg says, Mandalorian on Fortnite. My kids are stoked. Yeah. I was watching some of the Ninja playing the new season. And I mean, this to me, though, is the Fortnite Roblox thing in a nutshell, right? Mm-hmm. Fortnite would rather do another Star Wars like partnership, cash in on that. It doesn't expand the platform in any significant way. It's just another sort of cash grab. But I can understand how people are excited about it because it's Star Wars and it's Fortnite together. Rick says, I loved Clueless Gamer.
Watch Girlfriend Reviews. It's very fun. It's well done.
I don't guess.
What did I play this week? I actually didn't play much this week. This week was a bit busy. I will say that I will play Cyberpunk, even though I'm not a single player guy. I am going to try it. I am going to give it a chance. I have very low expectations because I was not a Witcher fan at all. But maybe I'll be amazed. I don't think. Let me just put it this way, because someone was asking me last week, after last week's live stream, what I thought of CD Projekt Red as a stock, right? Just sort of what my feelings were there, and I think they're at this maximum hype stage now, where if they put out even an average game, they're kind of dead in the water, right? The hype is so massive. It's so real. I think for a lot of people, the game is just not going to live up to it. It won't matter. They will have already bought it. But I think a lot of people are going to end up not disappointed, but at least not feeling like this was the greatest thing since sliced bread that were being sold.
It's going to be a really good game, but I don't know. I just so what? I don't understand how they're worth as much as they are when they just make a really good game every so often.
Yeah. It's a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype baked in there.
Yeah, definitely don't buy the stock now. There's only room to come down, Dead cap.
I would describe the way these stocks typically trade is it's a sell the news type event. I mean, look at Take-Two's stock over, a long enough period. When Red Dead came out, I think it was $140 stock. It took almost 2 years to get back to there. So it is above there now, but it traded down and kind of flat for 2 full years after Red Dead. So,
I mean, when you look at the 1 month run of CD Projekt Red, it's an interesting graph. The last few weeks have seen this huge bump as we get closer to launch. So it'll be interesting to see. what that looks and feels like. On that note, guys, I will say, don't forget every week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays, we do this after show. Bring friends, tell your friends about it. We really appreciate you guys coming and participating. It means a lot to us. Tomorrow, the podcast drops every Thursday, obviously. Tomorrow's episode is really good. William and I had really great discussion. And on Mondays, tune in for my minutes. I put it out on LinkedIn. We're going to put it out on a few other places like Twitter and maybe even Instagram starting soon. And I will say one thing. I'm going to tease one last thing before we sign off here. In the next week or two, I don't want to promise next week, as I get the notification that William is logging into Heroes of the Storm here. I literally got the BattleNet not notification.
Dude,
I'm like, could you wait one more minute for us to finish
I'm
this?
just seeing who's on. So
Oh,
You just can't wait to play Hogger.
dude, I freaking love that game. You can't make fun of me. It's the greatest game. I'm not gonna hide it.
I will tease this. We have a very, I won't say big announcement, but a very cool announcement coming in the next week or two. I can't say specifically. I don't want to promise next week. It might be 2 weeks from now. Attached to that, we're going to do a very special giveaway. So with the announcement, the only requirement to be eligible for that giveaway is everyone's now getting their like year-end Spotify thing. If the Business of Esports was in your top like podcasts, in your Spotify roundup or wrap up, whatever they call it, if you post that, tag us anywhere you want to post it, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever, you will be automatically entered to win this mystery prize. But I will say it's going to be a very fun prize, very different, attached to this announcement in the next week or two. So stay tuned for that. As always, again, stay tuned for the podcast tomorrow. And thank you guys for coming. Thank you for those who stayed for the whole thing. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, William. Thank you, Jeff. As always, you guys are awesome. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you. Sounds good.